The Pittsburgh Steelers have their quarterback room in place, but the question remains, if a better option presented itself, would the Steelers move on from Mason Rudolph? What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/, all Steelers talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today, let's talk about Mason Rudolph. The question remains, if the Pittsburgh Steelers had a better option, would they move on from Mason Rudolph? History tells us that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not sold on anything super positive when it comes to Mason Rudolph. They enjoy his leadership. They enjoy his veteran presence. They enjoy the fact that he understands the offense and that he has only spent his NFL career in Pittsburgh, and therefore he knows exactly what to do in any given situation. He is a Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. He's a great backup to have for any NFL organization, but for a team that he fully understands the offense, and to be a third quarterback, it's hard to pass that up. I saw why the Steelers re-signed him. It made a ton of sense for Pittsburgh. Didn't make a ton of sense for Mason Rudolph, but at this point in the offseason, you had to wonder, was he going to get another job? Or was anybody at all even calling to see if this guy was available and ready to come play backup quarterback for them? When a year ago, we were talking about, well, Mason Rudolph might get dealt at the trade deadline. Mason Rudolph back in training camp was a name to watch for the Detroit Lions. He was ready to go. And there was a belief that Mason Rudolph could be a potential starting quarterback in the NFL. Now we sit here and we think Mason Rudolph probably wouldn't have a job if he wasn't in Pittsburgh. So if the Pittsburgh Steelers decided that, well, Mason is expandable, and they've seen that in the past, Mason Rudolph didn't really have a real shot at the quarterback competition last year. He's never really given any opportunity since his starting season in 2019. The Steelers have somewhat given up on this guy. So would they move on? There's one name, and I think one name alone, that stands to push Mason Rudolph out of Pittsburgh. And that one name is someone that the Pittsburgh Steelers have not hidden their love of, fits the mold of where the Pittsburgh Steelers like to get their free agents through the NFL draft, when they loved them in the NFL draft, and now they approach them with an opportunity to sign them for a cheap contract later in their career, and is young enough, developing enough, seems to have all the upside in the world, and fits what the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking to do and what Mike Tomlin is looking for in a quarterback. And I'm telling you, it makes a lot of sense for him to be a backup in Pittsburgh and try and rejuvenate his career early. That name is Malik Willis. I know a lot of people instantly are going, whatever. Malik Willis is not worth my time right now. Malik Willis is not coming to Pittsburgh. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, the rumors are out there, but it's not going to happen. Well, what about when the team reporter says that there's still a possibility that Malik Willis, who is improving, is going to hit the chopping block and end up as a free agent? Jim Wyatt, Tennessee Titans team reporter, said that Malik Willis outperformed rookie Will Levis during minicamp and OTAs, but that doesn't guarantee him a roster spot, even with the new rule. Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis will be on a 53-man roster, Wyatt writes, because Tannehill is the starter and Levis is the 33rd overall pick, and he's going to be given time. So Malik needs to keep improving and earn his spot. The Titans typically only keep 2 quarterbacks on their roster. So if the opportunity presents itself and they don't feel like keeping Malik Willis and they aren't taking advantage of the 3rd quarterback rule, does that mean that the Pittsburgh Steelers have an opportunity? Will that opportunity be strong enough for them to pursue it? Well, let's talk about it. Malik Willis essentially takes a lateral move to come to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He comes to Pittsburgh to play behind Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky if the Steelers were to move on from Mason Rudolph. He is that third quarterback who is active on Sundays, even though he wouldn't be under a normal NFL rule book. The Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at a situation with Mitch Trubisky where after this season, it makes more sense to move on from him than it does to keep him. His contract extension obviously lowered that $10 million cap hit down to about $4 million. But next year, that jumps to $6 million. And the year after that, it jumps to $8.3 million. So the Steelers aren't looking to pay $8.3 million or maybe not even $6 million for a backup quarterback. Even if Mitch Trubisky is their guy and he enjoys Kenny Pickett, the reason that they kept him around is not because they just want the league's best backup quarterback. It's because they want Kenny Pickett to develop properly, and they understand that Mitch Trubisky, being a veteran with starting experience and playoff experience, has shown he could win in this league, is a key point to mentoring Kenny Pickett into year 2. Maybe that does mean year 3 at most, but I do not believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers are very high on keeping Mitch Trubisky around long term as their backup quarterback. So they're going to need another option. Malik Willis is a guy that unfortunately has fallen into this label of is already possibly a bust, isn't going to make it in the NFL. He comes from a very, very rough draft class that included Kenny Pickett and has not performed when given an opportunity in the league. I get it was early, but the label of him and the understanding of Malik Willis coming into the NFL was this guy is as raw as it gets. He needs plenty of time to develop. And at that point, it's tough to say that a team is going to take an opportunity and a risk and say, hey, we'll develop him. We will wait on Malik Willis to see if he turns into anything. It's hard, very, very hard to say that Willis will ever get another opportunity at a starting job. But to be in Pittsburgh as a backup is a pretty good gig. And to be behind Kenny Pickett is as good as it gets for the Pittsburgh Steelers and for Malik Willis if he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. He also gets to learn behind Mitch Trubisky for a season, and I get that that doesn't add all the value. That's not Tom Brady-like, but it's still a veteran who is proven in this league, who has won in this league, who has made the playoffs in this league. This is a guy that you want to learn from. So Malik Willis gets to learn from him, someone who does have a lot of the same skill sets that Malik Willis has. And then a year, maybe 2 years max. But I believe that if you have Malik Willis on the roster, you move on from Mitch Trubisky in a season. Malik Willis is your primary backup, and he is the 1-2 punch to Kenny Pickett. And he allows you to feel safe that if Kenny goes down or has to miss time for any reason, Malik is a guy that could come in there and at bare minimum use his athleticism to the best of his ability. And at bare minimum, probably win you some games on his feet or with his feet, and let Najee Harris and company kind of lead the way. He's a guy Mike Tomlin absolutely adored during the draft process. He is a guy that has more athleticism than almost any quarterback in the NFL outside of Lamar Jackson. Malik Willis is a unique talent who probably won't be given the right opportunities because of how raw he actually is. But if he needs time to develop, if he needs time to learn, the Steelers have the setup right now where they could let him learn behind Mitch Trubisky for 2 years if they really wanted to, and then move him into a backup role. The pressure is not there. It's seemingly a high risk or a low risk, high reward shot in the dark for the Pittsburgh Steelers that's going to come with a very low price tag, a very talented player, and overall somebody who could be a long-term solution to the Steelers' backup quarterback situation, and a young one that you feel very good about, one that gives you a real backup option if the worst case scenario happened of maybe Kenny isn't that guy a year down the road. Well, you could take another shot with a guy like Malik Willis and see if that works out. And I'm not saying it's gonna. Chances are it wouldn't. But it's still another opportunity. It's still another chance. It's still another option. I just think that Mason Rudolph is a spot that you feel safe with. He is the safest possible bet for the Pittsburgh Steelers as their third quarterback. If Malik Willis somehow finds himself on the free agency market before the start of the season, he is by far your best option for that third quarterback spot. He's not safe, but man, he has a much, much, much higher return value and a much higher reward that could come with signing a guy that a year ago people were talking about maybe the Steelers are contemplating using a first round pick on. Malik Willis hitting the open market by the start of week 1. You got to ask the question, would the Steelers move on from Mason Rudolph?